Hello everyone, and welcome to this special edition of The Dig. The federal budget was released recently, and wow, there is a lot in this budget, such as $80 million to public geoscience, doubling the mineral exploration tax credit, $40 million for permitting critical minerals projects, $1.5 billion for new infrastructure, another $1.5 billion to invest in new critical minerals projects, $144 million to critical minerals research, $10 million renewal to the Center of Excellence on Critical Minerals, $70 million for global partnerships to promote Canadian mining leadership, and the list goes on. This is the first budget, in my experience, that has such a focus on the mining ecosystem and in terms of critical minerals. What I mean is it addresses everything from exploration and discovery to the EV automotive assembly plant. It recognizes the linkages of the whole value chain. In short, this is an industry policy and Canada's first critical mineral strategy. But am I getting too excited? Let's find out as I discuss the budget release with my friends, Brendan Marshall, VP of Economic and Northern Affairs for the Mining Association of Canada, and Ian London, Executive Director for the Canadian Critical Minerals and Materials Alliance. So let's dig in right now. You know, a year ago, I had you individually on and we were talking about the budget, and what I was pleased to hear is that mining was back in the budget. That was one aspect. And of course, critical minerals started to become part of the language or narrative inside it. But, you know, in terms of looking at our friends down below the border and stuff, it wasn't very aspirational, we'll say. But this one is definitely a different story. It's really there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of dollars tied to critical minerals and in our sector specifically. So with that, there's a lot to talk about in it. So I'm going to hand it over right away here to you, Brendan, to maybe kind of give your take on what was delivered there.
Sure. Thanks for that, Ryan. So noteworthy is the announcement of Canada's first critical minerals strategy. And it's important, I think, to note that this is not just a placeholder to think about what we should do. There's a significant ambitious allocation of capacity to do something in this space. $3.8 billion have been allocated in what I take to be a well thought out whole of supply chain representative approach to bolstering not only the discovery, but also improvement of the economic viability of mine development for critical minerals, including further downstream mineral and metal manufacturing, partnerships with Indigenous communities, and research and development to help take advantage of the many segments of the sector that exist as Canadian strengths, whether that's through mine waste recycling or improved processing. So from my hot first take for the Dig crowd listening today is that this is more than just an attempt to throw money at a problem. This represents a thought out approach that will, through the allocation of infrastructure investment, R&D development, manufacturing investment, doubling of the mineral exploration tax credit, will do many of the things that are needed to actually get more production and manufacturing of critical minerals, whether that's for clean technology, whether that's rare earths, for other types of advanced manufacturing, to get that production off the ground where it's needed or expanded where it currently exists.
Right. And that's, and I can add to that too, is that to your point, a thought went into it in terms of how it's touched on the whole value chain in regards of what it's presented here. And I thought that was an important note. And to your point, there's a strategy. It's actually documented as a critical mineral strategy. So it's something we definitely were looking for, and that whole thing. So I'm Ian, what's your take on this?
I share Brendan's take in terms of I applaud the I applaud the budget in terms of, we have been advocating for a long time, demand driven. You can see it's clearly tied in with clean technologies, clearly tied in with e-mobility, and in effect, demand will help enable supply. It does look at and clearly addresses the need for chain, not only the individual links, but integrating those chains. But if there is a concern I have, which is always the case, is that's step one. Yes, it's aspirational. The world competition is galloping forward. It's all in the delivery for us. Yes, there's dollars being allocated, but some of it goes down 10 years or 8 years. You look at what our Asian communities have done, and when I say Asian communities, China, Asian competition, these are 10, 20-year initiatives. We've got to maintain that momentum, and it's imperative that government, industry, we bring the ball down the court and we actually start implementing. So it's in the delivery side, not just the aspirational side. But excited by the opportunity, because at least we have a starting point, and the key drivers, demand, supply, and the interim steps recognized. It's now up to us to actually figure out, well, doing it, not just figuring it out, and doing it.
Right, and I guess that there's the key part. I think what you're specifically talking to as well is, as we have political terms, will potential regime change, or at 2025 does this thing fall off the vine? Or, I guess the critical piece here now is, for the next 2-3 years, there's action that creates the momentum that this isn't going to fall to the wayside. We know the global momentum's there. We see it, and the opportunities are there. But to your point, will it continue, or will it get disrupted, and we'll miss the opportunity as a country?
And how we accept the odd failure along the way. We've set them. The government has set some great aspirational targets for electric vehicles. If we don't have material supplies and the plants don't get built, we're going to undershoot some of those things. That's typical of any sort of implementation of an industrial strategy. It takes time. We shouldn't lose faith in the thing, because I think the model, the aspirational, makes all kinds of sense for this country, and we can do it, as Brendan highlights. We have the natural resources, we have the human resources, we have the financial capacity. We finally have an aspiration. Do we have the stick-to-itness? I think we can. Let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I have a couple things to add to that. So when I was reflecting the other day on that rollout, because part of what Ian's getting at, in my view, is, it's one thing to say something, it's another thing to do something. But I want to add a positive comment here, because much of the work that we're seeing right now in the critical mineral strategy is under a broader umbrella of the sort of SIF net zero accelerator mines to mobility frame. Okay. And that only was announced in the fall of 2020 by the former ISED Minister Navdeep Bains. That was launched in the policy options piece. And then Minister of Environment, Climate Change Canada, Jonathan Wilkinson, announced the first Healthy Environment, Healthy Economy updated climate plan, in which included $15 billion of new investments, a component of which was $3 billion for this net zero accelerator operated by ISED. That funding was bolstered in budget 2021. It jumped from $3 to $8 billion. And so that's the starting point. Okay. There's one thing to be said about, were we late getting into the gate? Well, we also have to keep in mind that it's only been a year, really, since we've actually gotten out of the gate. And I've had my concerns, as Ian expressed, around the ability to actually move these funds out the door. But what we're seeing in the last few months, I have to give credit where credit's due. Yep. The ability of the officials and decision-making process under SIF at ISED over the course of the last 10 to 12 months to secure investment for a gigafactory from Stellantis, to secure investment for cathodes and anodes manufacturing in Quebec, to secure investment for other segments of the supply chain. That is all very promising when it comes down to deliverability. And it's that type of momentum that we have to keep in mind will be behind. That'll be the wind in the sail for pushing out this critical mineral strategy, because this isn't a distinct piece. This is the front end, the upstream of that advanced manufacturing supply chain. And I think the government recognizes the need to move expediently, to act wisely, but move expediently because time is a factor. So I'm feeling good about this in terms of not only what's said to be done, I'm also feeling good about the demonstrated ability for the government to make meaningful decisions to secure substantial globally competitive investments into Canada in the last months using this. I think that's the lens through which we look at the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. And go ahead, Ian.
I share your take, Brendan. The only sensitivity I have is we also articulated this 10 years ago. None of this e-mobility is new. None. But you're right. We now have the winds and the sails. We've got to maintain that momentum. There have been some very positive signs. Not a cynic, but let's keep it going. It's not done, and we have to. And once we start, there's no hiccups. There will be hiccups along the way. We just can't allow that to stop until we actually have some roots in the ground.
Well, and I think there's where the excitement is too. Is this is the first time I think where, we're in it, or take 2021 out of the narrative here, but where we've tried to kind of navigate through the language of a budget to see where we can benefit our sector and our industry. This one clearly states it, and what's even better, it connects it in the value chain. And so what we have is the opportunity for all links to this value chain to coordinate itself. And so I think it's on our responsibility as an ecosystem to work together along that linkage, to communicate back to the government, because what an easier way they finally have set out, as you put it, I think, as an industrial strategy where the whole value chain can actually have that dialogue with them, say, this is what's working, this is not what's working. And so that'll help hopefully expedite what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah, I think it will. It's one of the interesting is and where industry, government, and finance community and academia can work together to do this is which of the many. It's not one supply chain. It's not just batteries. There's drivetrains. What's held up the cars most recently is not any of these fancy batteries. It was a $2 semiconductor.
Yep.
So at the end of the time, there's multiple supply chains. And so I think industry we can work to identify the priorities. What are the short-term hits? What are the little longer-term hits? But how do we keep this boat sailing? So
that's right, Ian. That's a really important point, because the focus, I think, has been on, and there's been a lot of progress to get to this point, but the focus has been predominantly on batteries. But I think that's viewed as an anchor. Okay, so if we're going to secure, and I think we're well on our way to securing battery manufacturing, battery supply chain in Canada, we're well on our way to doing that. That's an anchor on which other supply chains are going to be built. We need more rare earth extraction and manufacturing. We need more magnet manufacturing. We need more of these pieces so that these other segments can come into play.
Right.
And the reality is, the biggest hurdle, I think, that had prevented progress from happening in this space has been cleared, and that is that increasingly in this country, mining is viewed as a climate action. Mining is viewed as a clean technology exercise, and I think increasingly the general public recognizes that. MAC does polling regularly, and the impressions of Canadians around critical minerals and the desire for more of this type of activity to happen within Canada's borders as opposed to outside of Canada's borders is increasing.
Yes.
And the reason for that is they recognize that it's better done here. It's lower emissions when it's done here. And at the end of the day, that's a big part of the driving force for doing these exercises in the first place.
Right.
So if we can have the lowest carbon intensity supply chain for the manufacturing of electric vehicles, for the manufacturing of other advanced technologies, everybody wins. The world wins on climate when Canada wins on critical minerals. And I think the government recognizes that now more clearly than it ever has before, so much so that it has the confidence to go to Canadians and say, we're making a substantial play. We're putting billions of dollars into doing this because not only is it what's right for the environment and the Canadian economy, but Canadians increasingly are comfortable and want to see these types of investments move forward.
Yeah. And what it brings on that, just building on your point, is not just the mineral supply side, the value added technology, advanced manufacturing jobs, which is the foundation of the future economy. We're the feed for it. My only comment, a little aside, I like the word anchor because you have anchor tenants, etc. But we cannot use it as to drag the rest of the movement forward. I anchor my boat so it doesn't move. I need the anchor to keep it. But if you know what I mean, it's an anchor and the foundation upon which to build this industrial, to roll out the industrial.
That's right.
Strategy.
That's right, Ian. And you know what? And the BEV piece, a big part of this, but it's not the only one.
Right.
Fractioning geopolitical trade realities, increasing geopolitical security concerns, the lack of reliability over existing trans-Pacific supply chains for key materials. You mentioned semiconductors. There's a lot of defense applications that the U.S. has substantial interest in. They want to have increased security of supply for these materials because they are national security considerations. That is a pull that's not going to be affected by an anchor in the BEV space. That's a both and, not an either or.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, if I can switch a little bit of the dialogue right now too, is one of the things that always was kind of on the back of my mind in concern was I understood and I saw the mines to mobility, narrative coming out of the government. But my concern was, without discovery and exploration and then a timely development of these resources, that becomes a moot point further down the value chain. But this one seems to address it. They seem to have recognized that, one, we need to encourage investment in these critical minerals. They were very clearly stating which ones. And then also then they spoke to the process, which I thought was really important because it shows to me that the government recognizes that we have a capacity issue in terms of getting things from discovery to pouring, if you will, or to producing the products that we call minerals. What are your thoughts on that? I was pleased to see it, but is it enough?
Ian, why don't you start on that one?
I'll start on that. They have, because it's a supply chain is from literally mine to e-mobility, and they've recognized finally that there's a connection to this thing. At the end of the day, nobody drives a mine. They drive a car. They fly in an airplane. They use their cell phone. That consumer demand will then encourage the supply side. If we have the supply side, the demand side says, I could buy that cell phone or I can manufacture that cell phone. I will actually move my plant here and develop the next level of battery because I know I could feed it. And for the first time, they see it as a chain, not individual links. So I'm quite confident that recognition I applaud. Okay. And that's been a while. It's not a supply push. It's not a demand pull. It's the combination of both. And there'll be gaps in that chain, which I think we will go out and fix those. Some with partners, others directly within Canada.
That's right. I just add to that and say, look, mineral and metal prices are high. Okay, some of these are at historic highs. This is a market for minerals and metals that operates in supply and demand principles, and the reality is Canada as a jurisdiction is competing with other jurisdictions to capture limited pools of exploration investment. And so that very front end of the supply chain is critical for what the industry looks like 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years from now. So if we want to have a steady and increasing supply of these inputs into these supply chains and advanced manufacturing processes, this component of the budget is key because it takes time to find the next generation of mines in this country, and making the decision that we want to be the most attractive destination to leverage every exploration dollar that's possible. that's a commitment to that future supply chain of mines and pipeline of mines going forward.
And building on Brendan's point, and by having those supply chains, the demand side will come back and tell us this is the kind of product we need. They actually don't look for the mineral. They actually look for what form you take that in midstream products to make that next generation battery or that next generation magnet. You have both sides. Yes, we have the sources coming. Yes, we're willing to listen to customers and understand what form they need it in, or maybe we can even help drive that. At the end of the day, Canadians win.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I think this budget clearly sets out a full comprehensive linkage to this whole value chain, and it's not us ending up just being net exporters of minerals, and that we will benefit from this. So it is an industry strategy, critical mineral strategy. I'm getting that we're all seeing it positive and a thumbs up for the government. And now it's just in our execution, and I'm sure we'll all be watching closely and participating in ensuring that it executes properly. So
our collective executions, not the government's to execute.
Exactly.
It takes us too.
That's right.
Exactly. and all our players.
That's right. That's so true. So I just want to thank you both for being on the dig today and sharing your thoughts on this, what I thought was an exciting announcement by the budget. So thank you very much for being on here, and I look forward to having you guys on again sometime soon.
You take care. Good seeing you again, Brendan. Thanks. Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Ian. Exciting
times. Be well.
Cheers. That's it for this week's episode. I'd like to thank Brendan Marshall and Ian London for taking the time to be on the dig. And remember, follow us on Twitter at Mining Suppliers and LinkedIn. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you get notified of all our upcoming episodes. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, I'm Ryan McEachran. Take care and stay safe.